Ogi doda girl in school Augustilis, this go you. Cosa deal or the heli, or this lagan do data, as go here. And give you a let Thailand down lane, down talking out. The new one is Cosa. He got your say dot, ski station guard, or this like, do you tell no negati, a guy need on I. Get detail Cosa is good Cosa, or 2 anyway, the Cosa, that's what they tell her on I side. I send the go hello, new dead the gone nest, new to go you can say something like yes, lane, now you go hello, there's a gone nest. Skis or detail Cosa is good, and God on any of the God do. Or to Ogdon Casset Cosa, and who to go you can set it down closer Cosa. Excuse you, the Cosa, G's Colonel do that good, because that's all this guy. Amen. Okay, before we're going further, we need to thank our volunteers from Northeastern State University, the Phi Sigma Nu fraternity, the Alpha Pi Omega sorority, and the Sigma Nu Alpha Gamma fraternity, and we would like to also thank the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service for providing security, the Cherokee Nation Information System staff for technical support needed to stream this event live on the internet, the Cherokee Nation Phoenix staff, which developed and planned the debate, and our debate timekeeper, Cherokee Phoenix Executive Editor Brandon Scott. We'd also like to thank our moderator, Frontier Editor-in-Chief Dylan Goforth. And now I'd like to introduce our Deputy Chief candidates. As you're introduced, please take your place behind your podium. And earlier this evening, we drew names to determine the order of the introductions, and we'll keep this order throughout the debate. First, Meredith Fraley. She is a Locust Grove native. Meredith Fraley is the daughter of the late Susie Swimmer, a full-blood Cherokee. She has one son and twin grandchildren. Meredith graduated from Locust Grove High School, holds a bachelor's degree in science from Northeastern State University, and Juris Doctorate from the University of Tulsa Law School. Fraley served on the Tribal Council for 10 years and as its speaker. She now serves as a Mays County Commissioner and the Locust Grove's attorney and prosecutor. Meredith says the most important issues of the next 4 years are ensuring accountability and transparency, growing jobs, providing excellent elder service and integrity in leadership. And Brian Warner served as a tribal counselor for Sequoia County, raised in Sallisaw, where he resides with his wife Mako and their 3 sons. Brian is the campus director for Carl Albert College Sallisaw campus. Brian cares deeply about education, healthcare, and forging partnerships with communities across the Cherokee Nation. He took the lead in the proposal that ultimately landed Sequoia County the new State Veterans Center in Sallisaw. As Deputy Chief, Brian will oversee the increase of health care spending, streamline services, and provide optimal care to our elders. And now
Brian,
I'll hand over
we
to
know
our
how to draw a
moderator.
crowd, don't we?
Yes, ma'am, we sure do.
Now I'll hand over to our moderator who will go over the rules.
Okay, thank you. We're going to begin with a 2-minute opening remark from each candidate, and then after those remarks, I'll ask the first question. It'll go to Mrs. Fraley. Each candidate in order will be allowed 90 seconds for an initial response, and then after that response, each candidate will have a 60-second rebuttal. We'll follow this same format for the remaining questions. We want to encourage the candidates to refrain from challenging each other, but if one candidate does challenge another, we may provide an additional 30-second rebuttal to address the challenge. When you see the green light, that means your time is running. The yellow light means you have 15 seconds remaining, and the red light means your response time has expired. After all the questions have been answered, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing remark. They did want to say that due to time constraints, they're asking the audience to hold all their applause until the debate is concluded. The use of flash photography and cell phones is prohibited, so we're asking the audience to please silence their phones. And they did want to say if you leave early, there's no re-entry. The Cherokee Phoenix staff composed tonight's questions. Okay, question 1 to Mrs. Fraley. Of the services that Cherokee Nation provides, opening remarks. Then question 1.
Okay. Personally, I was greatly influenced by my full-blood mother, Susie Swimmer, who was a victim of federal assimilation when she was removed from her home at 4 years of age and placed in an orphan asylum where the intent was to strip her of her language, her culture, her tradition, in other words, to Americanize her. And I was greatly influenced by her wisdom and her strength as a strong Cherokee woman. I'm from Locust Grove, graduated Locust Grove High School, attended Northeastern State University where I majored in business education. Upon graduation, I was hired as a high school girls volleyball coach in Sullivan, Missouri. I got homesick, moved back to Oklahoma, and worked for Kerr-McGee where I met W.W. Keeler. At that time, they were focusing on hiring minorities, in particular Cherokee people. He encouraged me to come to Phillips Petroleum Company. I applied and started in the Research and Development Department, was promoted to international, and then the opportunity came to be Associate Recreation Director, where I had the privilege to work with Ken Treadway. Mr. Treadway was the director of recreation and athletics for Phillips, and he also was the Olympic swim coach for 4 different seasons. I learned an awful lot from him, and that was a fun job. And then I was the associate director of the Bartlesville Family YMCA. I met my husband. We had 1 son. My husband passed, and then reality hit. I thought, wow, I have a small child. What am I going to do now? So of all things, I enrolled at Tulsa University Law School, was accepted, received a Native American Rights Fund scholarship, and graduated, passed the bar. And then my son and I moved to Tulsa, and I worked in the banking industry while I was attending law school. Then I served in marketing and sales at Cherokee Nation Industries. While there, I saw needs of the people, ran for tribal council, served in that capacity for 10 years, and was elected speaker. After leaving the tribal council, I ran for county commissioner of Mays County, and that is where I serve today. And I also serve as town attorney for Locust Grove and city prosecutor. So don't get any speeding tickets when you come through Locust Grove. Brian?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to the Phoenix for putting on this debate and being a graceful host, and all the sponsors and everybody that came out tonight. More importantly, I want to thank the Cherokee citizens that are here, that are at home, that are watching, and all of those that may not be able to watch. This is your debate. This is your tribe, and I believe that's why we are here tonight. You know, for me, this is a journey, and for many of us, we've all been on a journey as our ancestors were on a journey, and they looked out and tried to picture future times and things that were to come. And you know, as Cherokee people, we've always been resilient, and we've always had that grit and that determination, and a lot of that self-determination that we see today, and our ability to self-govern. And that's the important things, and that's why we are truly here today, is to preserve those things. And for me, it's, as I listen to elders and as I listen to those individuals that are in the communities, you know, it's one thing that they've all had in common, and they talk about the legacy. And when I'm talking about a legacy, I'm not talking about any individual legacy. I'm talking about the legacy of our Savior, Jesus Christ, and what He's done. And what our task is following that legacy, whether we're in tribal government, whether we're in education, whether we're in city government, or whether we're just out making a living for our family. Right now, I'm looking for that sweet spot, that, I'm always wanting to get that understanding of that, what is my purpose in my life? What is it that, where is it that I best fit? And I think that I learned best that I took a group of kids one time to Camp Egan, and I thought we were taking them for their learning lessons, but actually it was all about listening. And that's one of the things that I want to always continue to do as the current District 6 Tribal Councilman. I've done my best to go out and to listen to those people. Listen with discernment about what's important to each and every one of them, what's important to those communities. And that's where we get our values, and it's those intrinsic cultural values that's in each and every one of us that we have to unfold those layers and get down into the pleats of the fabric of what our Creator has created, because in there, that's where you find that sweet spot. These are critically important times for the Cherokee Nation as we enter into gaming compacts and as we look at the future of our health care, as we look to the language and the culture, as we look to protect our land and protect our water. It's a big task, and as the Deputy Chief, I feel that it's the utmost important to uphold my oath and to be prepared to step in and to help our next chief move forward. And I can guarantee you that I want to be a full-time, all-in, 24/7 Deputy Chief. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Fraley, first question. Of the services that Cherokee Nation provides to citizens, what service or services do you feel should have the greatest impact?
One of the most important things that we can do as servants of the Cherokee Nation is protect our sovereignty. And the services that we provide, all services that we provide, one is not any more important than the other because they all affect different people in different ways. So, but one of my priorities would be in behavioral health. I think we need to expand and improve our behavioral health. The opioid epidemic in Indian country and in Oklahoma is tragic. There are children 10 to 24 years of age who have committed suicide. It's the second largest major cause of death in ages 10 through 24. And it's important that we build a treatment center that includes a detox center, that includes counseling for our families, for our children, because they're all affected, the community is affected. So that would probably be the most important priority and services that I think we can provide.
Mr. Warner, same question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As Meredith stated, I believe that they're all important. Whether you're talking about health care, whether you're talking about culture, whether you're talking about education, housing, career services, Indian child welfare, public health, commerce, tax commission, the environmental protection that we have, and CCO. One of the things that ties my community together, all those community groups, they're all important, but one of the things that we really see, as Meredith stated, is protecting our sovereignty. And there's no better way to protect your sovereignty than to exercise your sovereignty. And I always think about when I came into this world, the first person I saw was a doctor. And a lot of times when we leave out, the last person we see is a doctor. So I know for many people as listening with discernment, healthcare is ultimately one of the most important things that we do. These are remarkable times for us. Healthcare right now today is more accessible than ever before. But as we look at this strategically, as we assess what we do in healthcare, which is basically we need to figure out, we know what we're doing, what our purpose is in healthcare. We know how we do it, but we always need to look to how can we improve, because our Cherokee people are vital to us. And I know that we need more doctors. We're looking for shorter wait times. We're looking to cut that red tape, and we're looking to grow the next generation of Cherokee doctors.
You have a 1 minute rebuttal.
Is there,
You,
No, I thought you did good.
a 1 second rebuttal.
Yeah.
say rebuttal.
Well, I have not a rebuttal, but just more to add. And Meredith, I want to say thank you for bringing up a great point in behavioral health and the opioid epidemic. Because when I look at behavioral health, I've often looked at a lot of models out there. So I sat on a CDC Tribal Advisory Committee, and I got to see what they call integrated behavioral health in the clinical setting. And I think that is important that we start to look at that when we move forward. And also, when you look at the opioid epidemic, opioids do not discriminate. They do not care if you're Cherokee, they do not care if you're Chickasaw, they do not care if you're non-native, whatever. And I think we have to really maintain really good partnerships and commitments to one another, whether it be with the federal agency that's battling the same thing, whether it be with the state agency that's battling the same thing, whether it be with the county agency that's battling the same thing. Cherokees have to stand up, because if we only cure Cherokees, we're just going to keep seeing the same problem over and over, and we need to make sure that we maintain those partnerships for the integrity of what we have left.
Okay, question 2 for Mr. Warner. If you are elected deputy chief, what actions would you take to bring in more jobs for citizens within the 14 counties?
More jobs. Well, what I would like to see is, when we're looking at these things, I want to make sure that we take a strategic look at our plan and how we move these dollars. I want to make sure that not only do we take a stance on being diversified in the business, and when I look at our diversity for our C&B, guys, we are in 47 states, 25 countries, and 2 territories. 53% of everything that we do is gaming revenue, but the other 43% comes from our non-gaming portfolio. And I think that's vital, because those are bringing dollars back. And when we put these dollars into our communities, we have to remember that partnerships maintain the integrity of our communities. And it's not a cookie-cutter method that we're looking at when we move these things. We have to see what fits in each different community. And we have to go to those community leaders to figure out what do they need best and how can our dollars be best spent there, whether it be partnerships like the VA, or whether it be putting more money into small business so that Cherokees can thrive together.
Same question.
Repeat it, please.
If you are elected deputy chief, what actions would you take to bring in more jobs for citizens within the 14 counties?
I think, first of all, we have to involve our employees as well as work with our C&B board in helping develop a strategic plan for economic and industrial development. I serve on I'm a member of the National Association of Counties, and we've discovered that there is a big field out there in foreign investment. I don't know if our board is dealing with that currently, but that's one avenue I think we should pursue, is foreign investment, because a lot of these foreign companies are looking for ways to expand, and I think they can expand here in the United States, particularly here in the Cherokee Nation. Our council, as well as our chief and deputy chief, should be working with our business board to ensure that we have quality, good-paying jobs for our people in an effort to bring self-sufficiency not only to our people, but to our nation also.
You have a 1-minute rebuttal.
Yes, sir. Well, and I not necessarily rebuttal, I want to continue on some thoughts, because this past administration and the current administration especially has made key investments on infrastructure. And when any group comes in to look at economic development, that's one of the first things they look at. But I believe the second thing that's one of the most important is, what type of workforce do you have? What best fits in your community? And as we look at that workforce, if we see some deficiencies in there, we need to look at how can we get them educated? How can we get them trained? How can we overall get those people developed so that our dollars are best spent in getting the best use out of what we want to do? And I always think that never forget that these partnerships that we have, because we can be that rising tide that raises all ships, but we need to remember that we can share these things, and we can share with our community leaders to figure out what is the exact best fit for that community, for our economic dollars to create jobs within the Cherokee Nation.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I agree with Brian that we really do need to involve our communities in, they know what they need, they know what they can do. Look at Mid-America Industrial Park in Pryor. They now have a plan to develop a district there which has homes, it has retail, and potentially it may even have a hospital out there. But that park alone, just that park, employs over 4,000 people. There is no reason why we cannot do that same thing in other sectors of the Cherokee Nation. We just have to go out. They're not going to bring it to us. We got to go out and hustle and get it.
Okay, question 3, Mrs. Fraley. Should education scholarships be provided based on financial need or based on a student's academic record?
I think it should be provided on academic record. There are many low-income children who live in poverty who are just as smart as those that are otherwise, and that is so important that we provide scholarships not only for our people that live within the 14 counties, but also provide scholarships for those that live at large. It's a very important tool in improving our quality of life of our families.
Same question.
Well, for me, being in education as campus director of Carl Albert State College and a longtime science instructor there and working with different universities and two-year colleges, for me it's not an either-or. It's what we need to look at. How can we best serve all of our students, whether it be financial need, academic record? I'm committed to our current grant system, but that doesn't mean I'm not committed to doing more when I look at these things, whether it's committed to going out and figuring out a way, how can we fund more scholarships? How can we leverage foundational, like for example, the Cherokee Nation Foundation, 501c3. They help us to leverage more dollars so that we can give out more scholarships. How can we go out into our community organizations that are at large? That's one of the biggest questions that we get. How can you get those dollars for me and my students? A lot of the time we fund over 5,000 scholarships each year, but I want to be able to fund more because I know right now at the Capitol in Oklahoma City, I was just there not too long ago, and the whole theme was invest in your future, and that investment was in education. And the Cherokee people have always invested in education. That's been one of the most important things we've done. So I feel that if we can get out there and partner and create more foundations out there and look for things like the VA has a yellow ribbon program where they have matching funds out there, I think we can extend our dollars and we can extend that helping hand to our Cherokee students.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. I think we also can provide educational opportunities to prepare our young people for the future by developing a prep school within the Cherokee Nation. And we also need to help our students or our young people overcome barriers to receiving financial aid. Sometimes we wait too long and the opportunity is already gone. So we need to help we need good counselors in our schools to help those people overcome those financial barriers.
I agree in looking at overcoming financial barriers, but I also want to take a look at what's going on right now and the jobs that are being created and the need, whether it be in the nursing field, whether it be as a doctor or PA or any of those things. When we take a look at our clinic, not all of those people in there are going to be nurses and doctors. There's going to be need for accountants. There's going to be need for clerks. There's going to be need for HIT, Health Information Technology. I think we need to take a look, and we have a directed studies program where we put specific dollars into that directed studies program, and it's similar to an IHS system. But that directed studies, that turns around, and those kids, they sign that commitment, and then they come back, and they've got an opportunity to have a job directly. We have all sorts of jobs coming open, and when you look at them, we're taking a look strategically at what's going on at this health facility. Pre-opening jobs, year 1, year 2, year 3. We have to, as educators, we have to get in there and make sure that we can provide for those types of jobs that are specialties that we need today.
Okay, now question 4 for Mr. Warner. How can you better prepare Cherokees to succeed in college or trade schools?
Well, for me, this is something that we work on directly at Carl Albert State College, and for my tribal students, because I noticed that as we look at national statistics, the trend is that the retention rates and graduation rates aren't as high for Native students as they need to be. And a lot of times this is because those institutions that are non-Native institutions, they do not have a cultural belonging. And I think that we need to look, there's certain grants and there's certain partnerships that we can do that help provide that cultural belonging there. And once they get that socialization of that group that they're in, then we look at the next thing. And I see this day in and day out on those retention and graduation rates. There's barriers of what we call, or challenges to persistence in education. A lot of these things, guys, it's very simple. It's transportation, or lack thereof transportation. When you take a look at 30 to 50% of a lot of these students, a lot of times, lack of transportation or just totally, or the distance that they have to go will cause them to withdraw. The second most important thing is food insecurity. In my district alone, it's about, in Sequoyah County, 11% food insecurity. That means the students, they don't have the sufficient amount of food at home. Those are some of the most important things. If we don't take a look at those barriers, how can we start to prepare these kids? How can we start to prepare these people to be successful? And that's being a good fiscal steward of our Cherokee dollars and making sure that they graduate when they need to graduate.
Mrs. Fraley, same question.
Repeat it, please.
How can you better prepare Cherokees to succeed in college or trade schools?
In college or trade school. Trade school is just as important as college, and like I said before, we've got to prepare these children from the cradle to their career. VOTECs are just as important. My grandson wants to be an electrician. I was encouraging him to go to four-year college. He said, no, I want to be an electrician. He said, they make a lot of money. And so I've encouraged him to do that. But the whole person has to be considered whenever we help them with their scholarships, whether it be to a four-year college or to an industrial trade school. One is not more important than the other. And like he said, basic nutrition is important. The family environment is important. Everything that affects that child, we've got to enhance because they are our future.
You have 1 minute.
Yes, and more of a continuance, because another thing that we look at is concurrent education. That's where students take college classes while in high school. Over 80% of students that do this, they go on to succeed and get at least an associate's degree, okay? On the other end of that, when we start looking at those students that do not, 35% roughly go on to get a degree. We can move the needle by them getting that degree, by getting them prepared for concurrent education. All they need is a 19 in their ACT subject area, whether that be English, reading, math, or science. And when we look at these things, we need to know that we have to have partnerships like the one that we have at Carl Albert with the AIRC, the Cherokee Nation Foundation, and the Cherokee Nation, because what it does, it prepares those students to get there. And one of the most important things that it does for the summer program for these kids is it starts to identify and nurture cultural sensitivity, because in our workforce, that is something that is very much needed, because we have these individuals that work with Cherokees and they need to know about our culture.
You have 1 minute.
He said everything I was going to say. No, not really. No, and I agree with everything he said. However, we do need to focus on all of our children, like I said, from cradle to career. And I think the Cherokee Nation is exceptional in our education program. We just need to take it to another level.
Okay, we're going to do question 5 for Ms. Fraley. What will you do to preserve the Cherokee language and culture?
One of the most important things we can do is in preserving our language is who we are. We need to develop immersion schools. I'm not quite sure where the immersion program is now, but we need to develop immersion schools within the 14-county jurisdiction, and also provide language classes online, not only for the people that live within the 14 counties, but also for people that live at large. And we can work with the schools to implement these programs within the schools, but we've got to have effective teachers in order to do that. So there's got to be a good training program for teachers that teach the language.
Same question.
I believe that this is one of the things that when we talk about language and culture, it's the one thing that all Cherokees seem to agree about, and how important it is, and how that's the one thing where we can all come to the table and really talk about, whether it's a story that you grew up in a traditional family or whether you grew up in a non-traditional family. We're still Cherokee, and there's still Cherokee stories. I think that when we looked at this thing 8 years ago or even past, that Cherokee language was an endangered language. And anytime anything that is endangered, you have to come in strategically and take a look at what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities, what are the threats to that. And when we do that, we start to set what we call analysis, or we assess where we need to go. And one of the things that we've done, we have the immersion program. They have in the past 3 years have created the Master Apprentice Language Program. We just need to be leaders that don't just talk about culture and language. We need to be leaders that make strong financial decisions that will allow us to preserve the language for generations to come. I think that's so important in what we do. I think that we could look at continued integration into all of our departments that we have, and how can we move that language and that culture into that. We need to leverage our technology to get that out to those at large. We need to involve Cherokee history more in those things, because that history sometimes is what starts to rekindle that fire and put those embers and turn those into flames that we can survive on.
You have 1 more minute.
Just a little bit more of what I said. Our language is our inherent right and plays a fundamental role in who we are by providing cultural and spiritual context in our daily lives. And I think we can also provide that context by providing culture and tradition in our important decisions as it relates to our language and our culture.
You have 1 more minute.
Thank you. And, and I want to add, too, that language and culture, in order for it to survive, it's got to be spiritually grounded in what we do. We have to take a look at this thing and come together. And like I said before, this is something that we all identify with, whether we were immersed in it at home or whether we heard about those stories. Those are so important. But it's so important that we look to our elders when we do these things. And we come back and we see how can we tether that into the lives of our youth. And I'm not talking just our high school. I'm talking, let's get down to that kindergarten, even that preschool level. You cannot start anything too early when we're learning. And sometimes we've been tasked to rebuild this thing from the cradle to the grave, and we need to continue those efforts and make sure, though, that we elect leaders that are prepared to make those strong financial decisions and fund these programs.
Okay, that was the last question. We're going to get to the closing remarks. Ms. Fraley, you go first.
Closing remarks? Oh, good.
Hey, we made it.
Yeah, we did. Once there was a great Cherokee nation. We believed in the law. We adopted the 1839 Constitution. We built our Supreme Court building and went on to build a national Capitol building, a prison, 9 district courthouses. We've always valued education and built a female seminary and the male seminary, 150-day schools. We were 90% literate in our language. We held land in common, everybody had a home, and there was no debt. That's pretty good for a tribe of people. We suffered 2 trails of tears. One was 1839. We lost 4,000 people of our 16,000 people over that 850-mile, I call it a death march, to Indian Territory in the middle of winter. And we suffered an economic trail of tears during the Great Depression, when half of our people left Oklahoma for Texas and California. And I say all of that to say this. we're a strong, resilient class of people, group of people. And today we have, as leaders today, we have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to carry on and give those gifts to our children. I want to help our people become satisfied with their own personal achievement, foster happy, functional families, strong and supportive communities, and a vibrant tribal government. I want to help Cherokees choose a satisfying career, have the ability to wisely determine their own destiny, families that help each other, communities that our people desire to return to. In other words, we need to provide an environment of gadugi, where we all work together as individuals, families, and communities for a better quality of life for today and future generations. I've been finished. Okay. Sorry, Brian.
You're fine. No problem. Well, again, I want to thank everybody. It's truly an honor. It's been an honor to serve as tribal councilman. It's been an honor to work with Chief Baker. It's been an honor to work with Deputy Chief Crittenden. And I'm proud to be of my running mate. I believe we've built a strong team. And, you know, I think back to where I came from the shed rows of those barns, the tracks all across the United States, mainly in Sallisaw, Oklahoma, where I'm from. And they're working side by side with my father, getting up every day and making sure that we do the little things. And I've talked about these things over and over, but that's the most important thing, because it's the little things that the individuals that work for the Cherokee Nation, it's the things that the Cherokee people do every single day that really move that needle. That's what is important to us. I want to thank my wife, Mako Warner. I want to thank my kids, Caden, Luke, and Clayton. They've been behind me 100%, and it's been so important that, you know, I feel that my faith has brought me to this decision to run for deputy chief. You know, and where I'm at, and when I was teaching school at Carl Albert, the best thing that I learned was sitting there and was that not only was my students accountable to what the homework was or what the lessons were, but I'm accountable to them. And I want to be accountable to the Cherokee people. My commitment is to the individual Cherokees and the individual communities all across the Cherokee Nation, all across the United States. I want to be on the home front, wherever that may be, to protect these things that are sacred to you. We all have things that are more important to us. I want to know what those things are. I want to stay grounded in faith. And on this day, a year ago, I sat with my grandmother, Belta Warner, and she passed from this life on to the next life. And I want to say, Mamaw, I hope I made you proud. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 45 minutes before the principal chief debate, so it's going to start at 7:30.
Good evening. Is it on? Good evening. You can hear it. Welcome to the 2019 Cherokee Phoenix debate. I'm Dennis Sixkiller, Cherokee Translator Specialist for Cherokee Nation's Language Department, and I'll be your host for tonight's debate. And after introductions, we will start the Principal Chief debate. First will be Dick Lay, and his wife is a 51 years old, Phyllis, are both a sixth Cherokee generation raised in the old Gooey district for Cherokee Nation. Dick has spent his entire life raising cattle and tending to the land. Dick served on Cherokee Constitutional Convention in 1999 and is competing his second term on the Cherokee Tribal Council. Dick was elected to office in 2011 and re-elected in 2015. He is chairman of the Community Service Committee and is a member of all standing committees. And I'm sorry I forgot, and I apologize for that. And before going any further, we need to thank our volunteers from Northeastern State University, the Phi Sigma Nu Fraternity, the Alpha Pi Omega Sorority, and the Sigma Nu Alpha Gamma Fraternity. And we would also like to thank the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service for providing security, Cherokee Nation Information Systems staff for the technical support needed to stream this event live on the internet, and the Cherokee Nation Phoenix staff, which developed and planned the debate, and our debate timekeeper, Cherokee Phoenix Executive Editor Brandon Scott. We'd also like to thank our moderator, Frontier Editor-in-Chief Dylan Goforth. And now I'll introduce the other two, all right? Okay, number two is Chuck Hoskins Jr. He's a former Secretary of State, Cherokee Nation, Tribal Counselor, husband, and father of two, raised in Veneta, where he currently resides. Hoskins is a graduate of Veneta Schools, the University of Oklahoma, and the University of Oklahoma College of Law. As Secretary of State, Chuck worked side by side with Principal Chief Baker and Deputy Chief Crenton to secure funding from the federal government to fund a $1 billion joint venture investment in better health care for all Cherokees. Chuck will cut patient wait times at Cherokee clinics, protect the Cherokee language and culture, and our land and water. Next is David Walkingstick. Talcon native David Walkingstick is the son of Deanne and the late Delbert Walkingstick. His father was the first chief of the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. Walkingstick is alumnus of Sequoia High School, where he was the first all-state basketball player. He graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma and also holds a master's degree in education administration from East Central University. And Walkingstick has served as a tribal counselor since 2011 and as the chairman of the Education Committee since 2013. His platform includes ensuring access to quality health care, increasing jobs, and scholarships. And now I'll hand it over to our moderator, who will go over the rules.
Okay, we're going to start here in a minute. Each of you will get a 3-minute opening remark, and then after those remarks, I'm going to ask the first question. Each of you, in order, will be allowed 2 minutes for an initial response. After that response, each candidate will have a 60-second rebuttal, and we'll follow that format for all the remaining questions. We want to encourage candidates to refrain from challenging each other, but if one candidate does challenge another candidate, we may provide an additional 30-second rebuttal to address the challenge. Over here, when you see the green light, that means your time is running. When you see the yellow light, it means you have 15 seconds remaining, and then the red light means your response time has expired. After all the questions have been answered, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing remark. Due to time constraints, they want to ask, this is probably going to be very difficult, but ask the audience to hold all their applause until the debate is over. The less applause, the more questions we can get through. They also are asking for no flash photography and to have everyone please mute or turn off your cell phones. And if you leave during the debate, there will be no re-entry. And before we get into it, these questions were composed by the staff of the Cherokee Phoenix. So we're going to start with Mr. Lay, your opening remarks. You have 3 minutes.
And thank you, and I'd like to thank the Phoenix for putting this debate on. It's very, very good of you. Appreciate that. My name is Dick Lay, and I am running for Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. And I believe I can do the best job as chief of the three of us, even though these two friends of mine are also fine people. I live on a ranch near Oshaleta, Oklahoma, and where all of my family live. And so it's a family affair at my place. And I have run the cattle, and I've also been in a lot of contract work when I was a younger man doing inspections in refineries and power plants. I've also, my wife and I have also owned and operated our own oil lease for about 25 years. And so I've seen every spectrum of the side of employment and contracting and being the boss and being the employee. And so I like to just say to our employees of the Cherokee Nation, y'all do such a great job, thank you. And we really appreciate each and every one of you. Down through the years, I have had, I've come into contact with healthcare problems and in my family, and healthcare is a big issue with me. I had to watch my grandfather, an original enrollee, die young. And I had to watch his daughter, my mother, die at a very young age. And so I can tell you from my own experiences that health care is really a priority with me. We always take care of our language and our culture and our land base and our people. And one of the ways we do that, we take care of our people, is with the health care. We're the biggest health care system, Indian-wise, in the United States of America. We should do it right, and we are doing a great job. We've got some problems from time to time on replacing docks, and we've got some problems on time to time in my two clinics in my district are without executive medical directors. We borrow from other clinics, and they serve half a week at one place, half a week at the other place. That's been going on for about 1.5 years or 2 years now. And so we need to replace those employees. The last time we were short of docks, it took 1.5 years at each location to replace those docks. We do a lot of locum tenens work, and I don't know what the percentages show, but the percentages show that we're at a very low percent, and we should be, because we're better than the IHS. We're the Cherokee Nation, and we need to continue on with the work that we're doing on our health care. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be on this stage as a candidate for Chief of the Cherokee Nation. I want to thank the Cherokee Phoenix for hosting this debate, Northeastern State University for the accommodations. I want to thank the audience for the time that they are spending this evening with us to hear our ideas, to listen to this debate, and the audience that is across the Cherokee Nation and indeed across the country watching online. I want to thank my fellow candidates for their sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice to pursue public office, and that's an admirable thing. I also want to thank my family. I wouldn't be where I am today without the support of my family. My wife and daughter are not here because they've been traveling across the country to campaign for me and my running mate, Councilman Brian Warner, in the at-large communities, and they're on their way back. I know my wife has pulled over in Albuquerque, I believe, to watch me, and I know she's watching right now. January, I love you. I'll see you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a critically important time for the Cherokee people. The next chief has to be immediately ready to work on a range of issues. We've made strides in healthcare, but we've got more work to do. We've got to protect our gaming compact. The next chief will be charged with protecting that gaming compact, which is the cornerstone of the revenue that we enjoy as a tribe to provide services and programs and employment for our people. We have to do more to preserve our language and culture, even though we've put a lot of resources into that. we have to develop even better strategies to make sure we save our precious language and that we can all enjoy our culture and heritage for generations to come. We've got to keep working to build a strong economy. The young people coming up today, the young Cherokees, need to have jobs here in the Cherokee Nation so we can keep them. They're a precious resource. And of course, we have to protect our land and our water. Those are just some of the challenges, but I think the major challenges that will immediately be on the desk of the next chief of the Cherokee Nation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that chief's got to be prepared to lead, and I am prepared to lead. I'm prepared to lead because I have led a life of hard work. I've worked hard at everything that I've done. I'm proud of my record of public service to the Cherokee people. I'm proud that I helped shape our government as a young delegate to the Constitutional Convention. I'm proud that I served on the Council of the Cherokee Nation and protected my district, served my district, stood up for my communities, and had the backs of my constituents. I've never forgotten that part of public service, and a chief should never forget that. I'm proud of my time as Secretary of State, where I helped shape so many of the policies that we are enjoying the benefit of today, where I've helped us achieve milestones. I helped Chief Baker and helped Deputy Chief Crittenden. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am prepared to lead. We need
Mr. Walkenstick, 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I just want to appreciate everyone coming here tonight. It makes my heart glad that there's a lot of people that's excited about the Cherokee Nation and that there's more eyes on the Cherokee Nation now than there's ever been before. But I'm a native of Tahlequah, Oklahoma, here in the heart of the Cherokee Nation. We've done some good things over the last 8 years. You know, we've grown to a $2.5 billion economic impact. But when you look at the front page of the Tulsa World, we're doing pretty good as a tribe. But let me tell you guys a quick story. My father, Delbert Walkenstick, was the first chief of the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. Unfortunately, we lost my father when I was 15 years old while I was a student at Sequoia High School due to a surgery there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But my life was impacted back then by the little things that we are facing today, and that's health care. You know, we've lost over 140 providers over the last 8 years. But where the Bible refers to as the white sepulcher, pretty on the outside, but rotting on the inside from the corruption, the waste, and the cronies, and the political elites getting money off the backs of the Cherokee people. I worked my way through school, graduated with a master's degree in school administration from East Central University. I went on to become a federal programs director at Muskogee Public Schools. But I'm asking for your vote that I can be the next leader in the Cherokee Nation. The scripture says, without vision, people will perish. I have a clear vision for the next 8 years of the Cherokee Nation's progress. And I hope that I can earn your vote on June 1st so that we can serve you, the Cherokee people. There's nothing that special interests can buy that will stop me from always putting the needs of the Cherokee people first. If you elect me as Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, I pledge to be the hardest working, most people-oriented chief that we've ever seen. I will also heed the words of our Cherokee elders while keeping in mind the needs of our future generations. I will enact an open-door policy so I'll be accessible as the Chief of the Cherokee Nation if someone needs help with a light bill. But I'll be available to meet all the needs, but I never planned to run for Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. But I also know where much is given, much is required. The Cherokee Nation, we've been blessed with a lot, and it's important that we as Cherokee Nation give back to our Cherokee people. I hope that you guys will place your trust in me as Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation so I can earn your vote June 1st. Madam. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lay, first question. What will you do to preserve the language and culture of the Cherokee Nation?
You know, that's an important question, and I've been on the council for 8 years, and I've seen what Chief Smith started, and I've seen that we have kind of released some of those programs, and I've seen what Chief Baker has started, and I don't really know that we have full assessment of where we should go yet. The immersion program is probably the most successful that I've seen. The outbound programs that we send our speakers out to and teach folks in the communities and at large work pretty well for words and phrases. The immersion school seems to work better for more conversational or fluent Cherokee. And so we need to figure out where we're going with this. I think now we found out we've got 2,000 speakers left, fluent speakers. And so how do we keep that number from dwindling down? And so the assessment team, I think, is on the job at this time. But I haven't seen anything come across the council desk that tells us this is what works, this is what does not work. And so we're back to the present system that if you're raised in a dual speaking household, that works the best. That's obvious. We've seen that. We know that. If you're not raised in a dual speaking household, or the grandparents as a dual speaking household taking care of the kids, then that's a whole new ballgame. And I have not seen where I think that we need to spend a lot of funding yet. Until I get those assessments, I'm going to pray that those dual speaking households continue on furnishing us with full fluent speakers until we can figure this out. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, same question.
Well, it is a critical job of the chief to stand up for language and culture, and I've had the good fortune to be in a position to do many of the things that Councilman Lay was just talking about. The immersion school is critical, but I'm so proud that we developed the Master Apprentice Language Program, which was an innovative program to give adults the opportunity to spend 2 years learning to speak Cherokee, and the results have been incredible. I mean, I've sat in the room in the Culture Committee when those folks have come in and just amazed first language fluent speakers with their ability to speak. And that does my heart good to see that and to hear that. But it's gone through the pilot phase, and now we have to expand it because we know it works. I mean, look, I work with the folks that run this program, or I did while I was Secretary of State. I know that we are seeing results. What we need to do now is put more resources into a program that is proven to work. We do things strategically, I think, when we're working at our best. And so taking it from the pilot phase, seeing if it works, moving it on to the next phase is the right thing to do. The immersion school, of course, should be supported. But there was a gap between the immersion school, the K through 6 kids, and the adult immersion program, the Master Apprentice Language Program. And so we did another pilot program in which we put it in Sequoia High School to give those young people an opportunity to keep their language skills fresh, to bridge them into the Master Apprentice Language Program. And then a further phase is we have to spread this out to other communities. There is a hunger among our people to learn our language. We have to give them the opportunity. It's the obligation of the government to do that and to inspire people to do that. So we will continue to work under my administration on those language programs. And we could even go beyond that. We can go into situations where we have people living in a housing area in which they only speak Cherokee. Can you imagine that? They go home at night and they're speaking Cherokees with their children. That's the way we learned our language in the first place, isn't it? There's other culture and history initiatives that a chief should be aware of. We've got to protect sacred sites. I'll do that as chief.
Since my name was mentioned, can I have
After the next question, we'll go through 1 minute. Mr. Walkenstick, same question.
I repeat the question?
What will you do to preserve the language and culture of the Cherokee Nation?
Okay, thank you. I've been a sounding board for the elders across the Cherokee Nation. When I go across and I talk to our elders, they talk about the 12 tribes of Israel and how they lost their identity in God. But then they go on to say, we've lost our identity in who we are as being Cherokee. Is that we measure all of our gains off of wealth instead of how many jobs we're creating, or how many scholarships we're putting out, or how many people that we're impacting through our housing programs. But we've lost our identity as being Cherokee. And it breaks my heart to hear that, especially coming from an elder. But as Councilman Lay said, we have 2,000 speakers left in the Cherokee Nation. And 85% of those are 65 years of age and older. Where's our language going to be in the next 20 years? Why aren't we prioritizing our dollars towards our language and sustaining our language? You know, as I was visiting with an elder one time, she was the last speaking person in her tribe. And, you know, as I was visiting with her, I was thinking about a Cherokee back home 20 years down the road not being able to speak to anybody in her own language. But we have to move our immersion outside of the 14 county. There's Cherokees outside of Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And we have to be sure that we get our immersion into rural areas so our language can sustain. But you have no culture if you don't have language. We don't.
So the way that we're doing it is everyone answers the question once, and then everyone gets 1 more minute for a rebuttal or to continue. So Mr. Lay, 1 more minute.
And thank you. And this, Chuck mentioned the pilot programs, and I didn't get to that before the time ran out. We have a couple of good pilot programs. They look good. I'd like to see a full assessment of it because we need to accelerate what we're doing in our language because, you know, we're losing these speakers, as you all know. I'm not a speaker, and you all know that know me. But I do know that it's important to us. It's important to us as a tribe. If we lose that culture and those speakers, boy, that just puts us behind the 8 ball. And so I understand there's 2 good pilot programs that the chief has started, and I'd like to see a full assessment of it if I'm chief. If you'll make me your chief, I will assess those programs and we'll fund them fully. Thank you.
Mr. Oskin, 1 minute.
The idea that the Cherokee people have lost their identity is just not true. I mean, tell that to the folks in the Master Apprentice Language Program when I've gone to visit them to learn about what works and what doesn't work, how we can improve it. Go to the immersion school and listen to them read Dr. Seuss in Cherokee. And then you tell me if we've lost our identity. Go out to the communities where community language classes feed this hunger that we have for our language. Folks, we haven't lost our identity, but we do need good leadership to expand these programs. We have to do it strategically, but we do have to act with dispatch because it is true that we are losing first language fluent speakers at a rate and we need to replace them. That's why we need to focus on what works. That's why we need to expand Master Apprentice. That's why we need to get into the schools to see what opportunities they have so these Master Apprentice graduates can go teach in the schools. That's how we're going to keep this language alive. And under my administration, we will not lose our language. It will be saved.
Remember, no applause, please. Mr. Walking-Stick, 1 minute.
All right, thank you. The Master Apprenticeship scholars that graduate don't have jobs in Cherokee Nation. They go off and they call us consistently trying to get employment. And one of the best things we can do is partner with our Johnson O'Malley programs and get those immersion teachers, those graduates of the Master Apprenticeship programs, put them into the schools where they can partner with 4 or 5 schools so that our language can sustain. But, you know, the immersion program right now, many of our kids, they're not getting best practices. And I'm the chairman of education, and I've been talking consistently about putting leadership in there that understands immersion best practices. You know, if you're speaking French or Japanese or whatever, there's best practices out there for them to retain the language. But right now, we're not doing that in our immersion programs, and therefore, our immersion could be better. And it has to be a priority in the Cherokee Nation leadership to make that happen. Well done.
Okay, second question. We're going to start with Mr. Hoskin. The gaming compact is up for renewal next year. How has your experience prepared you for these critically important negotiations? Do you feel as if anything needs to be changed or negotiated differently?
Well, the gaming compact is absolutely critical, and I touched on that in my opening remarks. It is the cornerstone of the source of revenue that we have, that we've been able to expand things like the language programs and other education programs, housing and health care. It is critical, and the next chief better be prepared to sit across the table from the governor of the state of Oklahoma, and the next chief better be prepared to work with members of the legislature on both parties. But I have good news. If you elect me, I've done those things. I have sat across from leaders in Washington, D.C. and Oklahoma City. I have built relationships on a bipartisan basis. Those relationships and that experience will inure to the benefit of the Cherokee Nation. And it's critical that you have a leader in there prepared to do that job. And here's why. The state of Oklahoma is in a fiscal mess. They have had problems with their budget for the last decade. The Cherokee Nation has not. We are in good shape. We are in sound financial condition. And when I am chief, the state of Oklahoma is not going to balance their budget on the backs of the Cherokee people. And that's what they could do if we have the wrong leadership in the chief's office and we go to negotiate this compact.
No applause, please.
I was yielding my time. We have to protect the compact. We have to make sure that if there's opportunities to expand it and expand gaming and bring in more revenue, sure, we'll do that. We're good partners with the state of Oklahoma when it's a win-win situation. But we're not going to lose when I'm chief.
Mr. Walking Stick, it's a long question. You want me to reread it?
Yes, sir.
The gaming compact is up for renewal next year. How has your experience prepared you for these critically important negotiations? Do you feel as if anything needs to be changed or negotiated differently?
Well, I've served on the tribal council for the last 8 years, and gaming has been pretty much the number one advancement in dollars as far as to the Cherokee Nation. But my biggest fear is this gaming compact 2020 is the fear of leveraging of state and tribal leaders on trying to get gaming to find a median. Right now it's at 6%. They're proposing 20%. And what if we don't go with the 20%? The same thing could happen that happened in the state of Arkansas, where they have state-regulated gaming. Members of their state they did a constitutional referendum to change their constitution so that they could get into gaming. And, the fear of that coming into the Cherokee Nation is frightening. And, it goes back to negotiations. But unfortunately, our business diversification has been gaming over the last 8 years. We built casinos for the last 8 years. I've been on the tribal council. Gaming is a good thing. It's brought millions of dollars. It's put many people to work, but not everyone wants to work in a casino. The fear is if state-regulated gaming comes into the state of Oklahoma, it's going to interfere with the tribal relations and the jobs and the day-to-day of our Indian people. So, yeah, this is an important time. It is important that we have leaders that go, but unfortunately, when you give millions of dollars to partisan politics, you don't have a seat at the table. You guys know that Oklahoma is a red state. And so that is one of the worst business models to have as a Cherokee Nation is partisan politics. We need to be nonpartisan or bipartisan so we can have a seat at the table with negotiations coming up in 2020. Thank you. We're done.
Mr. Lay, the gaming compact is up for renewal next year. How has your experience prepared you for these critically important negotiations, and do you feel as if anything needs to be changed or negotiated differently?
And first of all, I'll tell you that I've been on the tribal council for 8 years. And I have sat down with a room full of attorneys many times. And sometimes there's elbows flying, and sometimes the debates go back and forth even within ourselves, within our Cherokee Nation attorneys, and the decisions on what to do and how to do it. And I'd like for you to know that I've held my own with those attorneys. I think I can hold my own with the state of Oklahoma. We do have a governor who's a Cherokee citizen, finally, after all these years. And so I think that it helps. I don't think that it's a guarantor that we're going to be victorious. I think they're looking for more revenue. That's obvious. But I also think that down through the years we've been known as a one-sided party, if you will. And so we have to center those things up a little bit. We have to apply both to the Democrats and the Republicans and the independents and try to deal with all of them. We can't go left-handed or right-handed, either one. We've got to go right down the middle and treat them all equally. And y'all know what some of that means, the PAC funding. And so that's what I've tried to do on the council. Sometimes it's been difficult because every attorney that comes through the door is usually a Democrat in the Cherokee Nation. We need to kind of center that out a little bit. We need to realize that these guys in Oklahoma City are not all Democrats. Some of them are, some of them are not. Some of them are tribal citizens, and they're willing to talk to us. All we have to do is sit down and talk to them and try to get an even balance. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. This idea that the state of Oklahoma is going to engage in gaming is something you could entertain if you didn't understand the compact. It's something you could entertain if you didn't understand the National Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. It's something you could be fearful of if you didn't understand that in this state, under our compact, the tribes of this state that signed on to that compact have exclusive right to gaming. And if you're going to be chief of the Cherokee Nation, you better know that when you go across the table from the governor of the state of Oklahoma. It's important. And here's the other thing. In terms of diversifying businesses, we're on a path to diversity, but the gaming compact still is critical. Now, I heard some remarks about partisan politics and we shouldn't be one side or the other. I couldn't agree more, but here again, facts matter. And the fact of the matter is, and you don't have to take my word for it, look at the PAC list that the gentlemen to my left and my right approve. We have given in a bipartisan manner. In fact, we've given more to Republicans and Democrats. I could not have had the successes that I had as Secretary of State of the Cherokee Nation if I was one party. I'm bipartisan.
Mr. Walking Stick, 1 minute.
All right, thank you. Yeah, as Councilman Lay said, the governor of Oklahoma is Cherokee that we went against in the campaign. And it was a lot of local endorsements from our administration. You know, thinking that we're going to have a seat at the table is it's challenging. But, you know, it's crucial, though, that, again, we don't have partisan politics going in. And the future of Cherokee Nation, it's crucial that we're bipartisan and we give equal amounts of money to both sides. You know, you guys seen many of our PACs, which I'm not on the PAC committee for the Cherokee Nation Council, but I do believe in the government relations. But it's hard for me to give money to political elites when they, I would say, a lot of them don't really have a lot of say in our day-to-day operations. When we have elders that, anyways, I'll finish my comments later. Thank you. We're done.
Mr. Lay, 1 minute.
And thank you. And let me advise the group and the folks listening in. When I came in 8 years ago, the PAC committee was predominantly on the left side of the ledger as far as what was given out. We moved that to the center, and I'd like to say that I had a lot to do with that. And I didn't have everything to do with it, but because I was there, I think we scooched it to the center. I think we have centered it, and we've got to stay that way. And so that's what I was referring to when I said nonpartisan politics. And I'm going to work with everybody. If they've got an R behind their name or a D behind their name or any other thing behind their name, we've got to work with all of them to get this done. Thank you.
Okay, question 3. Mr. Walking Stick, you'll start. Over the past 5 years, Cherokee Nation Entertainment spent $6 million to expand gaming operations in Arkansas. In your view, was this a good investment?
Well, when you talk to the leaders, they said it's an insurance policy to keep other casinos coming up to our bordering areas. Was it a good decision? it's not a good decision when we're not taking care of our people back home. You know, I live in the heart of Cherokee Nation, and I see many of our elders that are living in dilapidated home situations. I see many contract referrals not being approved. And so when I start seeing those things, I start thinking about reprioritizing money and being financially responsible for Cherokee people's money. That's it's one of the things that if we're not taking care of our people first, we don't need to be taking care of political elites, and especially in the folks in Arkansas. But I understand the insurance policy that was in place, but it was really tough to go through with that, knowing what our people were going through here at home in the Cherokee Nation. And a lot of those dollars didn't make it back. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And I feel like all those people in Arkansas really didn't have our best interests at hand. But with the $6 million, we didn't get anything in return but an insurance policy. You know, there was Polk County that we were supposed to get a casino in, and it didn't happen, and now we're trying to transfer agreements, etc. But again, it goes back to being financially responsible and putting Cherokees first. So under my administration, I believe we would have took care of our people first before getting into a compact with the state of Arkansas, because we need to turn back to a time in history when Cherokees were taking care of Cherokees instead of Cherokees taking care of non-Cherokees to the detriment of the Cherokee Nation. Well,
Mr. Lay, over the last 5 years, Cherokee Nation Entertainment spent $6 million to expand gaming operations in Arkansas. In your view, was this a good investment?
Well, and let me answer you this way. I'm going to give you a slightly different slant on this answer. The gaming folks at CNB, C&E said this was an insurance policy. Our people who needed services at home are saying, why didn't that money come to us? And I can certainly understand both issues. Here's an issue I'm going to tell you that you probably don't know, is that the council was called one day and said, this is what we're going to do. The council never voted on it. The council didn't know about it. I never knew about it. It was already a done deal by the time that I called in to a meeting that told us we were spending some money in Arkansas, and we didn't know how much exactly. Turned out to be that figure that you gave. I never voted on it. I didn't give a vote on it, and that's one reason that when I'm your chief, that I'm going to make sure that the heads of CNB, C&E are Cherokee citizens, so that we will have just a little bit more heads-up warning on these kinds of issues. I hope that we got the insurance policy. I'm not sure that we did. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskins, same question.
It was absolutely the right decision. If we had to do over again, we better do it again. And here's why. If you care about the fiscal responsibility of the Cherokee Nation, if you care about making sure we take care of our people, then here's what we were faced with. These two gentlemen were in the meetings that we're talking about. It wasn't council meetings, he's right, it was meetings with Chief. Here's what we were told, and this was reality. If Arkansas gets gaming and they line it up on their western border, our eastern border, then we are going to take a major hit with Roland and West Siloam Springs. I knew immediately what that meant before I heard any numbers. That meant jobs for Cherokee families, and it meant revenues for programs that take care of elders and a lot of other things. Here's what the numbers showed. 1,200 jobs were at stake. I'm not willing to gamble with 1,200 Cherokee jobs. $25 million per year that those facilities bring into the Cherokee Nation. I'm not willing to let that go down the river. Not willing to do it. And I'm glad we didn't, because we won on that proposition. We knew that Arkansas was eventually going to get gaming. The question was where? Is it going to be a place that would kill our market in Arkansas, or could we control it and push it off to the east? We won. We pushed it off to the east. We protected Cherokee jobs. The chief of the Cherokee Nation better be ready to protect Cherokee jobs. The chief of the Cherokee Nation better be prepared to protect the revenue that takes care of elders and children and health care and housing and education. It means something to me, and it meant something to me in that room that day. Here is the other thing we achieved. We have an opportunity now, down the road, to get into that gaming market to create even more jobs. Again, the market that doesn't affect our Roland and West Siloam Springs casino, but near Little Rock, we have the opportunity to potentially get into gaming there. More revenue, more jobs. Folks, if you understand that $25 million a year is more than $6 million once, you know that's a good idea.
No applause, please. Mr. Walker-Stick, a 1-minute rebuttal.
Yeah. You know, as Councilman Lay said, it comes back to transparency. It's talking about doing business in the light and doing away with all the darkroom deals. Many of the council did not know where that $6 million was going. And we asked many questions to CMB, and we never got any responses. And as I refer to CMB as being a slush fund for the chief, you know, we spent $6 million on a gaming compact, state of Arkansas, $4 million to Northeastern State University, $500,000 to the Smithsonian, and millions to political elites. When you guys start, we got to start prioritizing our money, and we need to start doing business in the light. Because the council, we was inquiring about that information for a long time, and we never got anything in return. And under my administration, CMB will have transparency with the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council, the people that you guys voted to be stewards of the Cherokee people's money. That's not a few people's money. We're all the stakeholders and the shareholders of the Cherokee Nation money. And under my administration, it will be shared leadership. We're done.
No applause, please. Mr. Lay, 1 minute.
And thank you. And here's what the issue is, and I tried to frame it before. Let me try it again. The day I heard of this issue was the first day I heard of it. That deal was a done deal. The chief knew about it. Perhaps somebody else knew about it. Perhaps not. But here's what happens when you don't bring the other elected officials along with you on this travel and this journey that we're on. When it's hidden from council. I'm an elected person just like the chief is. I got elected from my district to serve my district and my people and our money just like the chief did. When that transparency went out the window is not good. It's not a good thing that you don't bring your council along with you as chief. My council, our council, the people you send to me will be brought along with us to be fully authorized and transparency will reign.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute.
Cherokee jobs and to protect revenue. Right thing to do to protect Cherokee jobs and revenue. The council was briefed on it. Was it an agenda item that was gone before the council? No, it was not, but the chief felt strongly that they needed to be briefed. They were briefed, and there was no opposition to it. And why would there be? Because $25 million a year is more than $6 million once, and 1,200 jobs for Cherokee families matter, and it ought to matter to the chief.
Okay, next question. Mr. Lay goes to you.
Yes,
there have been allegations that a large number of doctors have left Cherokee Health Services, and that this has led to longer patient wait times. This is a 3-part question. Do you agree that doctors have left at high numbers? What is your plan to attract and retain doctors, and what will you do to reduce patient wait times?
Well, and part number 1, yes, doctors have left. Quite a number of doctors. I believe it's over 100 in the past 4 to 5 years. And somebody, I see our health people in the audience, they can correct me if I'm wrong. What was the second part?
What is your plan to attract and retain doctors?
Well, and so the staff that we have is doing a lot of that now, the recruitment staff, but I have suggested that not only because of the doctors we've lost, but because of the healthcare load of doctors we're getting ready to need at the new clinic, that we form a super staff of recruiters, if you will, to go out and recruit these doctors. We can't sit in Tahlequah, Oklahoma at our desk waiting for a call from a doctor who needs a job. We've got to go get them. And of course, you know, the OSU program is going to be good in that. It's going to help 6 years from now. We need the help now. And what was the third part, sir?
What will you do to reduce patient wait times?
Well, and we've got to go, that's part of it, we've got to go recruit these docs and healthcare professionals. And so we've done some effort in the wait times, in that we've gone to a system that includes all the clinics together now. The systems aren't stovepiped like they were when I first came in, and that was a good move. And so that will continue to work, because we're continuing to learn how to use the new Cerner system. And I would continue that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hoskin, there have been allegations that a large number of doctors have left Cherokee Health Services and that this has led to longer patient wait times. Do you agree that doctors have left at high numbers? What is your plan to attract and retain doctors, and what will you do to reduce patient wait times?
Well, improving healthcare has been a cornerstone of my campaign, and it will be a cornerstone of my administration. It's an important issue. Too many doctors have left. Some of the numbers that I've heard thrown around during the campaign are just plain wrong. It's lower than has been cited. It's about 88 if you look at the actual doctors over the last 8 years. The vacancy rate is around 10%, which is actually below the regional average for IHS-funded facilities, but that's not good enough. It's not good enough for me, because wait times are too long, and we do need to step up our game on recruitment. Now, I had the opportunity to work with health officials, the chief, other folks with IHS to create this opportunity for the joint venture program, and that is going to be the expansion at Hastings. It's going to bring $100 million into our health system, new dollars into our health system during the life of this building. That's a tremendous opportunity to do things like step up our recruitment, to hire, but we do have our work cut out for us, so we better have a chief that's prepared to do it and has worked in it. And so we need to leverage those dollars for recruiting. We need to look at compensation. We are in a hyper-competitive environment. We're competing against folks that are in the same environment we are, where it's tough to recruit doctors, so we do need to look at compensation. But the other thing we have that a lot of the other places don't have is we have the first medical school in Indian country in the history of this country right here in Tahlequah, and it'll be open in a year and a half. That's a tremendous opportunity for the next chief to inspire a new generation of Cherokees to become doctors. It's an opportunity for us to put dollars into scholarships for med students so that they go to the Cherokee Nation Medical School and they come serve their own people. That's important, because when I go into these health centers, I want to see them full, and I want to see Cherokees taking care of Cherokees. We have to put more resources into patient advocates. We have to put resources into case managers so that you don't fall between the cracks between doctors' visits. We have more to do on health care, but we need strong leadership to get it done.
Okay, Mr. Walking Stick, same question. There have been allegations that a large number of doctors have left Cherokee Health Services and that this has led to longer patient wait times. Do you agree doctors have left at high numbers? What is your plan to attract and retain doctors, and what will you do to reduce patient wait times?
In 2016, while I was on tribal council, I did a FOIA GRA request to HR. And in 2016, I lost 126 providers. So 80 is an inaccurate number. And since then, I've counted the doctors and fires that have left since then. But however, with saying that, it has increased the waiting times for our health care. When a citizen has to go and wait 8 to 10 hours to see a physician, it's unacceptable. And I'm a victim of that, and many of you guys in here are victims of that. But how to retain and sustain doctors? Paying doctors what they're worth is how we're going to sustain and keep our doctors. And if we can't afford it, then stop giving money to the state of Arkansas. Stop giving money to Northeastern State University. That's being financially responsible, how to retain doctors. If we can't find another source of revenue, let's go into third-party billing. Let's sponsor all of our elders 65 years of age and older for Medicare B, Medicare D, so that when they come to our hospitals, we can collect money, third-party revenue, to pay our doctors what they're worth. There was a compensation committee formed, and not one of the doctors was retained after they had formed this compensation committee to receive raises for our doctors. And the doctors that did receive a raise didn't receive a raise, because we have a thing called RVUs. And they got a 3% up front, and then they had the 2%. They had to see so many patients to see their to get their 2% bonus. But again, the waiting times in our hospital is unacceptable. And our OSU Medical School, it's a great program. The 5th and 6th year kids, that's going to be residents. You got to have a doctor to shadow under to be a resident, and we don't have any doctors for those people to shadow, so those residents are going to be going to Hillcrest and other places. That's all I have. Thank you. We're done.
Mr. Lay, 1 minute rebuttal.
And thank you. We've recently lost our executive medical director, a Cherokee citizen who retired from IHS, who ran the IHS. I don't know what happened, but I can promise you we need either him back or somebody just like him to help us run that facility. He actually probably had as much more to do with any one individual on the joint venture for the new clinic. I see a lot of politicians running around claiming that right now, but this gentleman probably had as much to do as anybody. The two chairs of that compensation committee for doctors eventually left, and I think that's telling. I believe hopefully we got one of those back recently, but all is not perfect in the Cherokee Nation health system. We got a lot of great people. They're doing a lot of great work, but here's the thing: we need to do better. We're the Cherokee Nation. We can do better.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute.
Yes, in this environment where it is a challenge to recruit doctors to rural areas, we do have our work cut out for us. But the first phase was building up magnificent facilities so that we can help recruit doctors into facilities that are worthy of the care they provide and worthy of the patients that they care for. With the joint venture, and he's talking about our former medical director, I was in Washington, D.C. with him, and I was working on those things with him, so I saw firsthand how it happened. And one of the things we insisted upon was our fair share of those resources. That's how we got to $100 million a year. Those are operating dollars, folks. Those are hiring doctors and nurses and professionals. We are going to have the resources to do this. The question is, are we going to have the leadership to do it? And if I'm elected, we will have the leadership to do it.
Mr. Walkenstick, 1 minute.
That's area on. Okay. So we built a 450,000 square foot or 480,000 square foot facility here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, that's going to have 850 jobs. And right now, we're short doctors all across the spectrum. The question is how are we going to fill 850 jobs with this 480,000 square foot facility that costs over $200 million? It's a beautiful project. It's a beautiful vision. And, the OSU Medical School coming in is supposed to grow your own and have the residents come in. But like I mentioned before, your 5th and 6th year kids at OSU that are going to be residents, they're going to be, they need a doctor to shadow under. And if you're short doctors, you're not going to be able, those residents will not be able to complete their residency. They're going to have to go, like I said, to another state or elsewhere. But again, under my administration, we will pay doctors what they're worth and our health providers and nurse practitioners so that we can have a world-class healthcare system and our people will have a first class and they won't be waiting 8 to 10 hours in our emergency room. So thank you. We're done.
Okay, next question, Mr. Hoskin, we'll start with you. Would you support an amendment to the Constitution that protects the Free Press Act? Why or why not?
Well, the free press is important to me, and I've got a record that proves it. I was on the Constitutional Convention, and I was among the delegates that made sure that there was a First Amendment to protect speech and protect the press. It's essentially the same as the United States Constitution First Amendment. And then I sponsored the Free Press Protection Extension Act. It was an extension of that in 2012 to protect sources for the journalists within the Cherokee Nation. So I would have to look at specific language on a constitutional amendment that would specifically protect the free press. It's already there in the First Amendment. If you understand the First Amendment, it's freedom of the press. It is in our Constitution. I'm proud to have been a framer of that Constitution. I'm proud to have taken the next step and drafted, sponsored, not just sponsored, but authored the legislation that protects journalists within the Cherokee Nation. It's important to me, but before we go looking at the Constitution and changing it, we've got to be mindful of unintended circumstances. But the free press is important. The Cherokee Phoenix is important to the Cherokee people and ought to be more accessible, frankly, to the Cherokee people.
Mr. Walkenstick, same question.
Can you reframe the question?
Would you support an amendment to the Constitution that protects the Free Press Act? Why or why not?
Our free press right now is it's supposed to be autonomous, supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be separated from the Cherokee Nation. And unfortunately, over the past few administrations, we haven't seen that. And we've had many journalists that I visit with that are afraid to write or put certain things in the press. And our employees should never be afraid of their jobs. And we should never, but we've created that culture here in the Cherokee Nation. Some of the recent articles have been very biased. The recent one with the fun facts you guys got in you're going to get that in the Cherokee Phoenix here pretty quick. But all of those reports that the journalists done was based off of tabloids and hearsay, which were many of them were just blatant lies. And so, however, my opponent, everything he said was truth. And so, when you got the chief editor that is the nephew of the Attorney General, Todd Hembry, and then also the former photographer for Chief Baker, then you start, where is the autonomy? Where is the independence of a free press for the Cherokee Phoenix? That's one thing that I want to see in our free press as well, is to get a true, independent, autonomous press that our people can trust and have faith in. And then that's what I'm passionate about. It's integrity. It's doing what's right. It's being truthful. It's being honest. Thank you. We're done.
Mr. Lay, same question.
Yes, sir. And so I would also have to look at any constitutional amendment, the verbiage, the wordage. You need to be careful about what you're doing with our Constitution. It's a very important document. The 75 document was good. I was a member of the Constitutional Convention as 99, selected by the Judicial Appeals Tribunal branch, and I'd like to think that I was there doing all the right things at the right time at the right places. And we did a lot of good work there. The constitutional amendment to do so, let's take a look at it and see what it says. You don't want to overstep any bounds, rule out any freedom of speech, or do anything that's going to give someone too much power. And so that would be something that I would look at. But let's see what it says. The 99 Constitutional Convention was a wonderful thing. It's the first time I had served the Cherokee Nation, and service to the Cherokee Nation there and here as your counselor, other than my family and being a Christian, is the greatest thing I've ever done. I'll never forget it. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute rebuttal.
Certainly. I heard something troubling a while ago, not from Councilman Lay, but from Councilman Walking Stick. I heard in an indictment of the Cherokee Phoenix, the oldest tribally affiliated newspaper in the history of this country, really the history of the world. It ought to bother us that someone who disagrees with what's in an article declares that the editor is biased and the whole system's rigged. Just because the facts didn't go your way doesn't mean you should scream bias. To have a chief of the Cherokee Nation, I mean, there's going to be times when I'm elected chief that there's going to be a Phoenix article that I disagree with it. I disagree with. I promise you I won't lodge the attack that was just lodged on our free press. It ought to be protected. It'll be protected under my watch. Again, I was on the Constitutional Convention. Freedom of the press means something to me. It meant so much to me that I authored legislation to protect the Cherokee Phoenix. It ought to be protected. It shouldn't be attacked.
Mr. Walking Stick, 1 minute.
I agree with Junior. We need to protect the independence of our Cherokee Phoenix. It is the oldest newspaper, but it goes back to being autonomous. Our board right now is selected by the chief and some of the council and also some of the election board, but we need to figure out a way to be autonomous, independent. And that is my vision for our Cherokee Phoenix. Cherokee Phoenix is a beautiful thing. It reaches thousands of Cherokees all across the United States. And it can be a wonderful tool for information on services for people and how great we're doing in the Cherokee Nation. But again, when it comes to, it needs to be exempt from politics. Politics needs to be exempt, and unfortunately it's not the case here. And again, those were blatant lies that was put in the Cherokee Phoenix. And again, I can't control that, but again, you got the Attorney General's nephew. Well done.
Well, you can 30-second challenge after Mr. Lay's rebuttal. Mr. Lay, 1-minute rebuttal.
Yes, sir, thank you. And Cherokee Phoenix is a wonderful paper. I read it religiously. The Cherokee Phoenix, probably 6 or 8 months ago, took my name and used it in an article that wasn't true. And I called them on it. After a certain period of time, they retracted and they cleared it up. And I appreciate those quick actions of the Phoenix. And it's funny now, it wasn't funny then. And so that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
So we'll do a 30-second for you and then 30-second re-challenge if you want.
The Phoenix cut my mic. Maybe they're... Let's remember, and the gentleman to my left mentioned it, there is an editorial board that is protected by law, and it's confirmed part by the council, the chief appoints some, and then that body gets together and approves the fifth. This is an independent free press. And every chief of the Cherokee Nation, to my knowledge, dating back to the beginning of the Cherokee Phoenix in the 19th century, has defended the freedom of the press and held the Cherokee Phoenix up in high esteem. That's certainly what I do.
And we'll 30 seconds for you, and then we'll move on.
Cut mine as well. There we go. The propaganda in the Cherokee Phoenix reaches the at-large folks, which that's the reason that our at-large are misinformed about the real struggles going on back home in the Cherokee Nation. And so we got to find a way where our at-large citizens are getting real information and real facts of the state of our tribe and our nation so that they can impact the leadership and the future of the Cherokee Nation, which many of them have family that live here anyway, so they're aware of what the problems are. But anyways, thank you. We're done.
Okay, next question. We'll start with Mr. Walking Stick. Some candidates have stated they want the Tribal Council to control Cherokee Nation businesses rather than the Board of Directors. Do you agree with that approach? If yes, why? If no, why not?
Let's talk about the Corporations Act. The Corporations Act is what separates the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council from the oversight of CMB. Right now, there's any expenditure that does not exceed $50,000, we don't hear about it. And it was under my leadership on the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council that I lobbied and advocated that at least $50,000 they would bring to us. But we still couldn't approve it. The money's going to go out the door. It's like Councilman Lay and myself getting a phone call in the late hour saying we're going to give $4 million to Northeastern State University, or we're going to give $6 million to Arkansas. Those are things that we have no control of. And as a steward of the Cherokee people's money, being on the tribal council, as you guys elected, all 17 of us, that is very important to me. When I see those dollars going elsewhere and I have no control of it. And when I see the bonus structures of some of our executive level elites making all that money, when I see the millions going to political elites in Washington, D.C., and I have no say in it, that's convicting. And then that's why I'm running for chief of the Cherokee Nation. And so that I can be a steward of that money and that we can amend the Corporations Act where CMB comes to the tribal council and does a financial report to us. Not a financial report, but the budget, the annual budget comes before the tribal council. We have CMB advisory members on the tribal council right now, but again, they're advisory. So when they make decisions, that is outside of our control on the tribal council. Now, however, the tribal council, we vote the CMB board in, but they're appointed by the chief. And so, unfortunately, we need more oversight, and I think the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council needs to be in the budget planning over the Cherokee people's money at CMB. We're done.
Mr. Lay, same question. Some candidates have stated they want the tribal council to control Cherokee Nation businesses rather than the board of directors. Do you agree with that approach? If yes, why? If no, why not?
I'm going to split my vote here. I'm going to say no, but here's what I'm going to tell you. That if I'm elected chief, the CEO of CMB and the COO of CNE are both going to be eventually Cherokee citizens. I think that takes a lot of the pressure off. I think that will do two things. Number one, those Cherokee citizens are going to have a lot of knowledge base with our people to start with that these two guys don't have. Those Cherokee citizens will have to come back to Stillwell to live. They'll have to go back to Broken Arrow to live, wherever it is they're living, and be among Cherokee people. And so the transparency factor is going to automatically go up, and I don't think at that point the council will have to control that. I would like to see a little bit more of council knowledge and transparency of things that are about to happen that we haven't seen in the past. And that's my answer. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, some candidates have stated they want the tribal council to control Cherokee Nation businesses rather than the board of directors. Do you agree with that approach? If yes, why? If no, why not?
I've never thought it was a good idea to turn a successful business over to a bunch of politicians. I never have. Now, there should be government oversight. There absolutely should be. And I know a little something about it because I used to serve on the Council of the Cherokee Nation. I would go from time to time to the CNB board meetings, talk to the CNB board of directors. And by the way, the entire Cherokee Nation Businesses board of directors is made up of Cherokee citizens. These are people that have a heart for the Cherokee people. They just happen to have a business mind that suits them well to oversee one of the largest and most successful businesses in the region. Revenue is up over the last 8 years, 78%. Income for that business is up 52%. Its net worth, and this is staggering, 80% increase over 8 years ago. And it gets even better than that, and this is what was important to me as a council member. The dividend over the last 8 years has gone up 272%. 272%. That's the funds that are used for education and health care and housing and all sorts of programs, saving our language. That's important. The business is successful. The business is successful, and I trust these CNB board members, all Cherokee citizens, to continue guiding this amazing enterprise. Yes, we need to diversify. Yes, we need to continue moving up. But if we continue on this trajectory, we'll have more funds for the Cherokee people. And by the way, it's not just the dividend, the jobs that this business creates. It's the major employer in the region. It's engaged in economic development in small towns like where many of us come from that the rest of the world forgot about. But Cherokee Nation didn't forget about it, and we use those resources to build up the whole economy. They're doing incredible things. Now, I served on the council. I asked questions and I got answers. I would read the reports. Sometimes when you show up at the beginning of the meeting, there's reports that you can read. I did that.
Okay. No applause, please. Mr. Walkenstick, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, I would be bragging on the CNB board too if they was my largest campaign contributor in my race. But the tribal council is very generous, and like Councilman Lay and Junior said, but those are our dollars. But here recently, CNB has become a PAC to the DNC, and it's unfortunate that that's made it to that level. But again, those are dollars that we can diversify outside of gaming. We need to start increasing our government 8A contracts into our rural areas so we can provide jobs. We need to start, increasing dividends so more dollars can come into services for Cherokee people. But again, as under my leadership in the Cherokee Nation, we will amend the Corporations Act so that there is more accountability, transparency, and oversight for the Cherokee people's money. We're done.
Mr. Lay, 1 minute.
And here's what our people want, and I heard this a couple of times from both my friends on the board here. And both these men are my friends, by the way. Sometimes we don't act like it, but they are, and they're good people. And so accountability and transparency, I've heard them both say that. And that's what our people want. That's what they're asking for. That's what I asked for from the council. I don't know who somebody else knows that served on the council at the board or CMB management, but I get the phone calls and we're doing this and we're doing that. The deal's already made. The council never was brought in to that episode. And so that kind of stuff will stop with me if I'm your chief. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute.
You know, the subject of transparency was raised, the subject of campaign finance was raised in the context of this question. We don't know what Mr. Walking Stick's campaign finance report is today because he didn't file it yesterday when it was due. So if we're concerned about transparency, we need to be concerned about that. He invoked it. I'm responding to it. But, you know, all of us up here, we're entitled to our own opinion, but we're not entitled to our own facts. And it is absolutely demonstrably incorrect to say that we're some DNC super PAC. The gentleman sits on the committee where these are approved, or he could sit on the committee if he chose to. He certainly can see the report. It's just wrong what he's saying, and I can't say it more plainly than that. But getting back to the businesses, we need this business to continue operating successfully. It is operating successfully. I trust the Cherokee business leaders at the helm to continue to do that, and I have seen tribes that have mixed politics and business, and it doesn't work.
Next question, we'll start with Mr. Lay, and it's a long one, so if you need me to repeat part of it, just let me know.
Hold on.
A federal court ruled in the Nash versus Department of Interior case that the Treaty of 1866 mandated that freedmen are full citizens of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation Attorney General did not appeal that decision, and now that decision is the law of the land. Do you agree with that federal court decision? If not, if you were chief, what actions would you take concerning the Freedmen decision?
I, like a lot of other people, most of our citizens, sat and waited for a federal decision for I forget how many years. And so the tribe waived sovereignty. It went to the federal courthouse. It took a long time to wind its way through that system. And so we had a decision. The executive branch and the Attorney General, it's my understanding, made a decision not to appeal that. And I don't know how many lawyers work for the chief, but there's a lot of them. And sometimes I take issue with lawyers, but ours are pretty smart. And so I am not going to sit here or stand here and tell you that I would have appealed that. I'm not a lawyer. I would have had to sit in on all the meetings, and I was not invited to those meetings, by the way. And so I don't know if other members of council were invited to those meetings where that decision was made. I was not. And so what it is at this point in time. So I'm moving on with that decision, and the decision that ended up at our Supreme Court, by the way. Our Supreme Court agreed with that decision, sort of overnight, but that's what happened. And so I'm moving on to other issues.
Mr. Hoskin, I'll read the question again. A federal court ruled in the Nash versus Department of Interior case that the Treaty of 1866 mandated that freedmen are full citizens of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation Attorney General did not appeal that decision, and now that decision is the law of the land. Do you agree with the federal court decision? And if not, if you were chief, what actions would you take concerning the Freedmen decision?
I agree with it. And, you know, here's what we should call freedmen. We should call them Cherokee citizens. They are Cherokee citizens. We have equal protection of the law. You know, in 2007, I was a young man, and there was a ballot question, 2007 special election. I voted in that election. and I voted to not take the Freedmen out of the tribe. That's my record on that. And when the federal court handed down its decision a couple of years ago, we knew what the law was. The law was plain, and the words of the treaty were plain. What we needed next was leadership, and we had leadership. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that the chief tasked me with doing something I think was important. He said, we're not just going to implement the letter of the law, we're going to implement the spirit of the law. And the way I feel about the Cherokee Nation is we've always had strength in our numbers and in our size. And I think that's true today. I think when we're a bigger Cherokee Nation and we embrace everyone, we are a stronger tribe. It's always been that way. And so I worked on different ways to make sure the Freedmen could get acclimated, that they could apply for citizenship. But equal citizenship is what matters to me. When I was on the Constitutional Convention, one of the provisions in the Constitution that I approved of was equal protection under the law. I believe in it. It's the law of the land, and it's the Cherokee way. I also believe that a nation ought to live up to its promises. The United States has not always lived up to its promises. It's broke a lot of promises to the Cherokee people, and I think the United States is less because of it. But I think the Cherokee Nation is more when we keep our promises, and that's what I believe as chief of the Cherokee Nation.
Mr. Walking-Stick, I'll read the question again. A federal court ruled in the Nash versus Department of Interior case that the Treaty of 1866 mandated that freedmen are full citizens of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation Attorney General did not appeal that decision, and now it is a law of the land. Do you agree with the federal court decision? And if not, if you were chief, what actions would you take concerning the Freedmen decision?
Well, the Treaty of 1866 is clear that the Delaware, Absentee Shawnees, and as well as the Freedmen are citizens of the Cherokee Nation. Of course, he has treaties, and they've been broken throughout the years by federal government. But however, in 2007, there was a constitutional referendum put to the vote of the Cherokee people to amend their constitution to have a Cherokee by blood tribe. And so it got voted on 77%. And as a Cherokee Nation tribal councilman, we're to uphold the United States Constitution as well as the Cherokee Nation Constitution. That's the oath that we take. Well, during my tenure on the council, the district court, Judge Hogan, had made a decision to let the freedmen into the Cherokee Nation. And so, when the Attorney General, Todd Hembry, decided to stand down, thought this isn't a freedmen issue, this is a sovereignty issue. Him standing down not only jeopardized the sovereignty of the Cherokee Nation, of a tribe to be able to determine its own citizenship, but it jeopardized the sovereignty of 566 tribes, the other 566 tribes across the United States. Sovereignty is something I take serious. The other thing I take serious is our people's voice. I'm not a one-person show, and I don't think the Cherokee Nation should be a one-person show. I think it needs to be shared leadership. The people vote for that. We need to take their voice serious. And it's called shared leadership. It's called democracy. But under my administration, just because I may agree or disagree with something, I'm not going to let it hinder the decisions in the Cherokee Nation. This is the Cherokee Nation People's Tribe. We're done.
Mr. Lay, 1 minute.
Yes, and as a counselor of the Cherokee Nation, I have always honored the law as it is written and as it is set down. I will continue to do that as chief, and that means this decision is final. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute.
The decision is final, and we need to remember that there is a threat to our sovereignty when we refuse to live up to our word. And it's not a threat to the sovereignty of the other Indian nations of this country. We were abiding by a federal court order, and it would concern me that someone would think adherence to that federal court order and that Cherokee Nation court order is eroding our sovereignty. I disagree with it.
Mr. Walking-Stick, 1 minute.
What concerns me is that we don't know what Constitution we're under. The BIA says we're under the 75. Todd Hembry and Cherokee Nation says we're under the 2003. So determining that and having those relationships with the BIA is crucial. But yet, the decision is final, and the time has passed, and freedmen are now citizens of the Cherokee Nation, and I agree with that, because one is it's our sovereignty. It's the oath that I took as a tribal councilman, and so that's the voice we have to do. However, the Constitution still has not been amended by the Cherokees by blood, and so we're going to have to come to the table with our constituents that voted 77% to have a Cherokee by blood. We're going to go back to them and say, hey, we need to change this. And under our administration, we're going to have to do the Constitutional Convention. And we're going to have to figure out ways to work around and educate our people so that we have good relationships with the federal government. We're done.
I'm going to go to the next question. Mr. Hoskin, you'll start. There has been some talk about changing absentee ballots. Do you believe absentee voting should be made easier or harder for Cherokee voters?
Well, I certainly oppose anything that makes voting harder, period. I think the Cherokee people consider their right to vote precious. And let's remember, for generations before us, the government of the United States took away our right to vote for our chief and our council. My grandfather, most of his life, a full-blood Cherokee, did not get to vote for a chief or a council member. So I think voting is important. That's why I voted in every Cherokee election since I was 18 years old, by the way. But I think that voting ought to be easy. I oppose anything that would suppress the absentee ballot, because let's remember who the absentee ballot helps. It helps elders. It helps people that are disabled. It helps people that work on Saturday. If they work on Saturday, June the 1st, they need an option. And it also helps folks that live outside of the Cherokee Nation. I believe that you're Cherokee no matter where you live, and that you ought to have the right to vote. And any talk of curtailing the rights to vote, absentee ballot, just I think flies in the face of that. I know my grandfather, who considered that right precious, when he finally got it, I think he would take a dim view of making voting harder.
Mr. Walkinsik, same question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
There has been some talk about changing absentee ballots. Do you believe absentee voting should be made easier or harder for Cherokee voters?
I believe the at-large needs to be more accessible. I think we should do it online where they have the ability, instead of going through the mailing them in an absentee request form. However, inside the 14 counties, absenteeism, over 51% of our counselors that represent the districts are being won by absentees. Over 51%. And as was stated, yes, the intent of absentees was for people who are medically ill, they're veterans, or they're just not able to, or they're off on vacation. But when over 51% of those folks are voting absentee, it seems to be a strategy in our races. And I believe we need to have election reform in the Cherokee Nation so that we can have our people that's in Wycliffe or Kenwood or Lost City or some of these rural areas will have a chance at being a councilman or being a chief. Because in order to win elections in Cherokee Nation, you've got to have absentees. It's the number one thing. Everyone knows this in here. And it costs money to work absentees. And Cherokees in rural areas don't have the money to send people door to door collecting absentee request forms. And so that's how we monopolize the elections in Cherokee Nation. And so we've got to make it where it's more accessible, but also people are stating a reason on why they're voting absentee. And because right now I tried to propose election reform in the Cherokee Nation, not for this race, but for races in the future, so we can have integrity in our election processes. Look at the state of North Carolina, what they're going through with absentees. So we got to tighten things up, and we need to start doing things in the light. And it also isn't good that some people are influencing the election commission. So thank you. We're done.
Mr. Lay, I'll read the question again. There has been some talk about changing absentee ballots. Do you believe absentee voting should be made easier or harder for Cherokee voters?
And it's a good question, and it's come up the last, well, especially the 15 election, and it's coming up. The questions are coming up again now. In the 19 election, I remember in about 2016, there was some talk on the council about trying to figure out how to not limit, but put some rules on absentee ballots. And I remember the Attorney General and our council lawyer, Diane Barker Harold, advising us that this could be considered against free speech and might interfere with voters' rights. And who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. There could be some form of legislation that would say each person mails in their absentee ballot to the election commission and not mails it in to a campaign, or not hands it to someone unless it's a family member or something of that nature. I would think that we could still fall under that free speech and voters' rights and still get this a little bit correct. And as long as everybody went by the same rules and we all knew what that rule was, I think we'd be okay. Otherwise, I'm very hesitant to bring something up that would be considered against free speech and voters' rights. No counselor wants that on their sticker. And so who in his right mind would do that unless we can assure ourselves that we're really making sure that we're still protecting voters' rights, but we're doing it in the right way.
Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute rebuttal.
Anything that suppresses the right to vote, I'm opposed to. It's simple. Councilman Walkistick may have laid out his strategy for campaigning. My strategy is as many Cherokee people that can vote. And if they need to vote by absentee, that's fine, as long as they can exercise that precious right to vote. And as chief, I will not sign any legislation that makes it harder to vote, whether it's absentee or whether it's in person. That I can promise you.
Mr. Walkistick, 1 minute.
I'd bet $100 that his race is going to be 50% absentees, and I'll bet anyone in here that. But anyways, so the thing is, yes, it's a problem. Is it ethical? No. Is it legal? Yes. But we have to fight fire with fire, and it takes a bigger man, a bigger chief, to play the game, get in there, and do election reform so that we can have more integrity in our elections. And that's what's really important to me. And we possibly need to adopt some of the Oklahoma laws. They don't have a problem with absenteeism. But those are some of the things that we need to look at moving forward in Cherokee Nation so that our people's voice is not being suppressed. Because when you have at-large and in-district absentees that are going and they're impacting our elections over 51%, then we gotta go back and look at that. But again, to make voting more accessible is important.
We'll do 1 minute rebuttal here, and then we'll do a 30-second challenge and a 30-second challenge rebuttal if you'd like. Mr. Lay, 1 minute.
Okay, well, and I've given you my answer. I will tell you that I never voted absentee until I started running for office, because the first time I ran through 4 full counties: Mays, Craig, Nowata, and Washington. I didn't know where I was going to be on voting day in those 4 counties. And then I voted again absentee in 2015 for the same reason. I'm going to vote absentee again this time, but I guarantee you I'm not going to ship my absentee ballot to someone's address, and I'm not going to give my absentee ballot to somebody who comes by the house and strong arms me for that ballot. And that's the difference.
Okay, Mr. Hoskin, 30 seconds.
Well, again, nothing to make voting harder. And the idea, I mean, it's true. Sometimes we don't know where we're going to be on election day. The idea that voting by absentee is unethical, I think, runs counter to the Cherokee spirit. It runs counter to our election law. I don't think it's unethical to vote by absentee ballot.
Mr. Walkistick, 30 seconds if you'd like.
I think it's unethical to touch and handle your own ballots. That's what I think is unethical, and it should be illegal. Under my administration, it will be illegal. To be able to notarize your own ballot should be illegal. Ballot harvesting should be illegal. The candidates should not be touching those votes and those ballots. That's my opinion. And again, election reform will happen under the walking stick Friday administration. to have integrity in our elections. We're done.
Okay, we're going to go to the last question. We'll go through it, and then we'll do each candidate gets a 2-minute closing remark after this one. So, Mr. Walking Stick, this goes to you first. What can be done to protect Cherokee land and water from chicken waste, runoff, and pollution?
Well, we were real quick to sue the opioid industry because they're affecting our people inside the 14 counties. I don't know why we didn't jump on the idea of suing the poultry industry for polluting our Cherokee lands, which many of our elders, our medicine men, water is very important. Water is life. They use water for medicine. And so for these state entities outside to come in and pollute our lands, when our administration and our Attorney General's office was not sensitive to what they're doing to not only our culture, but to our own lands. And, one of the first meetings they had there in Little Kansas, I was there advocating for our Cherokee people. Now, chicken's great. I love chicken. But you need balance. Everything needs balance. You put too many cattle on a pasture, it'll kill the nutrients. But when you get too many chicken houses and it takes all the water out of the aquifers, go out to Little Kansas. Go out to Jay. Go out to those northeast areas and those rural areas and visit with those Cherokees. Ask them about the chicken feathers that's in the chicken mites that's going into their homes. And they're relying on us as the Cherokee Nation to stand up for them. Where is the Cherokee Nation when our people need them the most? And it's crucial that our waterways and our quality of water is sufficient. We have people having to move from their original allotted lands because they run out of water on their wells out in the rural areas. That's unacceptable. And as Cherokee Nation, as chief of the Cherokee Nation, we will go to the state, we will regulate the poultry industry so that they will not be polluting our lands. And so water is life. Water is medicine. We're done.
Mr. Lay, same question. What can be done to protect Cherokee land and water from chicken waste, runoff, and pollution?
This issue has cropped up on the past year or so, and I've listened to both sides, and I've tried to be as equal as I can. I'm an independent businessman, independent rancher, but here's the problem. The problem is not with the chicken companies. I was asked to sign on to a lawsuit against Big Chicken when I first got on the council, and I said, the state of Oklahoma tried that, and they got their clock cleaned and spent millions of dollars doing it. I can't sign on to that. You can't sue everybody and get your way. What we can do is we can go talk to the state legislature. When the laws are different from the state of Arkansas and the state of Kansas and the state of Oklahoma, and the setback laws and the how deep you can drill a water well and how much water you can pull from that well, that's the problem. Arkansas is tight, Kansas is tight, we're loose. And so let's go to the state legislator. A lot of them are Cherokee citizens, and work something to where we can get the setback laws and the water laws the same as the other two states that seem to be kind of, they're almost preying on us. And so I know there's talk of a chicken plant in Coffeyville, Kansas. That would directly affect my counties. And if they think they're going to come and drill a water well in my county, they're mistaken. You'll hit salt water at any depth you go to. And so they'll have to use the rural water, and that's expensive. And so we need to work with the state and not figure out a way to sue somebody. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin, same question. What can be done to protect Cherokee land and water from chicken waste, runoff, and pollution?
Sure, it's a very important issue. The water is critical, it's sacred, it is essential to life. I've been to the Little Kansas area. I've seen these poultry houses right next to an elder's home. I've been to Leach School where you can smell what's going on there from the poultry houses. I've seen the degradation that comes with the over-concentration of these houses. Now, I'm proud to have been part of a team that has a great track record on protecting the environment. We do it in a strategic way, we do it in a thoughtful way, and we do it in an effective way. I mean, we cleaned up the toxic waste at Gore and protected water for generations to come, generations to come. We brought renewable energy ideas and projects to the Cherokee people, which will benefit us again years down the road. And yes, I worked on, with the Secretary of Natural Resources, a statewide moratorium on permits for these poultry houses. We worked with industry and we worked with the state to say stop. That was an important accomplishment, and a council was convened to address these issues, but we've got to do more. Now, there are some communities that are already impacted, and we can't just throw up our hands and say, well, the chicken houses are there, so we lost. We've got to make sure we remember that the Cherokee people living there are impacted, and they're impacted not only in their water, they're also impacted economically, because it turns out it's bad for the local economy to have this much concentration of poultry houses. So the chief of the Cherokee Nation needs to have a strategy to help these impacted counties with the economic impact of having this much, the jobs that may be lost, the opportunities that may be lost. You have to think about that as well. We also need to extend the moratorium, and we need to make sure that that stays in place until we find some solutions with respect to setbacks, with respect to the impact on the land and the water. We've got to keep working through that, but we've got to extend the moratorium so we can do it outside of an environment where these houses continue to be constructed. And I have experience doing that, and it will take experience and leadership.
You'll get one more minute in a second. Mr. Walking Stick, 1 minute rebuttal.
Yes, you know, I'm glad that that committee was formed at the state level, but the damage is already done. It's too late. And I'm glad that Cherokee Nation, we came in with help of Sarah Hill and Natural Resources, come in and help form that committee to help put regulations in. And it's just it's a tough time. It's a tough situation. My heart goes out to the folks in Little Kansas and Leach and Northeast Oklahoma. But again, they was looking at the Cherokee Nation, and it was the actions was too far, too late, and the damage is already done. But again, I commend the actions of our natural resources and their effort. But under my administration, if situations like this arise, we'll be proactive. We'll hit it early instead of waiting until it's too late. We're done.
Mr. Lay, 1 minute rebuttal.
Yes, sir, and it is better to catch it early rather than late. I see a couple of counselors sitting in the forum tonight who went out and did a lot of groundwork for some of the rest of us, and to tell us what is going on with these chicken houses. Hundreds of thousands of chickens right next door to somebody. The setback laws didn't work, or we need them increased. I've seen these chicken houses. You can drive by on 412 and see one of them. It's a huge, the thing is as big as a ship. It's amazing to me. And so I have friends in Rose and the J area who are sitting there waiting, wondering, are they next? And so that's why I say we need to get to it and get with our state legislators, because it's a state law setback and water problem. As much as ours. It's our water and it's our land too, but we have to work with that state to get it done quickly. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Hoskin, 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, certainly the next chief of the Cherokee Nation needs to not have a defeatist, we give up attitude about the impact of the poultry houses. We can't give up on those communities. We can't say it's too late. We have to do something, and it takes leadership to do that. And one of the things we need to work on is a legislative strategy to make sure that we have laws in place that can, again, protect homes, protect schools, to increase the setback requirements. We also have to continue to develop our water plan at the Cherokee Nation, something that in this past administration we've worked a great deal on. We have to understand the state of our water, and we have to be prepared to assert our water rights, because if we're in a position to assert our treaty-based water rights, we're going to be in a much stronger position to stop this kind of pollution. But we certainly can't throw up our hands and say, I give up.
Okay, we'll go on to the closing remarks now, and we'll just the same order that we started in. So, Mr. Lay, 2 minutes for your closing remark.
And thank you. And first of all, I'd like to thank my wife, Phyllis, who stands by me. She's been standing there for 51 years, having my back, and God bless her. Who else could put up with me, right? I want each and every one of you to know that my family and being a Christian and serving our people the past 8 years as your independent councilman, those are things that are highlights of my life. What could ever beat that? I have no idea what could beat that. A grandson did probably, but that's an aside. That's part of the family. I want you to know that if you vote for me, I want you to know that I'm not part of any machine. I'm an independent person, independent-minded. Maybe the chief thinks to a fault, but that's fine. That's his thought. When you're an independent and you don't depend on machines, I think I've got a better outlook on life and a better outlook of how to lead the Cherokee people. And if I didn't think that, I wouldn't be here. I paid a lot of money to be here. I'm paying a lot of money to stay here and stay in this game. And I'm not doing it just because I think that, this is fun and games. I love serving the Cherokee people. I don't like the politics sometimes. Even though it's interesting, sometimes the politics and the chief and I have talked about that, get way beyond funny. They get somewhere else. But I'll serve you as an independent. And I'd like to leave you with the thought that I've tried to serve everybody, not only my district, but everywhere else. I take phone calls from Tahlequah. And I had an elder tell me one time, the man's from Dewey, Oklahoma. He's now on dialysis. He told me one time, show me where one Cherokee is better than another. And I've lived by that since then. God bless y'all. Appreciate you.
Mr. Hoskin, 2 minutes for you.
Wadeau, and I appreciate the Cherokee Phoenix for hosting this debate, NSU for the accommodations. I appreciate the audience who has hung in there with us. We appreciate that. It's important to be civically engaged, and also the audience watching all over the Cherokee Nation and all over the country. We are a large nation, and I feel like we're very engaged in this election. Folks, I think the best days of the Cherokee Nation lay ahead of us, but I don't think it's automatic. I think it happens if we have the right leadership. And I believe that I can provide that leadership. There's more work to be done. On health care, we've achieved some great strides. We've got to reduce patient wait times, and we've got to have a strategy in place to make sure we seize these opportunities, like on the joint venture, the expansion, and the medical school. Those are opportunities to be seized. It won't happen automatically, that it inures to the benefit of the Cherokee people. We've got to do more to preserve our beautiful language and culture. We've got to invest in our economy, create jobs. We've got to protect that gaming compact. We have to protect our land and water. And I've worked on all these issues, and I'm prepared to continue to do so as your chief. Folks, we're truly on the verge of great times, I feel. I feel like my record of public service is something that has prepared me to lead. But I think another thing that has prepared me to lead, and I know my wife and daughter is watching, my son is probably watching, my father probably watching, is family is important. Family is important. I think there's something about raising a family, dealing with the ups and downs, dealing with the challenges that helps prepare a person to lead. I certainly think that has helped me be prepared to lead. It helps me and my running mate, Brian Warner, not just think months down the road and years down the road, but lifetime down the road and generations ahead. That's what you deserve from your chief. So now's the time for tested, experienced leadership. I know that I can provide that. We're on a path to prosperity. We need to fix what needs to be fixed, and we need to continue on this trajectory of progress. The next chief will impact the next generation, but it starts with this generation.
Mr. Walkenstick, 2 minutes for you.
Thank you. God won't relent till He has it all. You know, this is a difficult time in the Cherokee Nation. 140 providers have left the Cherokee Nation, increasing the waiting times, also decreasing the quality of care for our Cherokee people. Housing Authority, $70 million in debt. There's no plan to fix the direction that we're going in. Our elected officials and government leaders, they're not doing business in the light. And the people are finally catching on to the corruption that's taken place. These are difficult times, but 2019 can be a turning point. It can be a time when light drowns out the darkness. That's why I'm asking for your vote as Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. Our people need a leader that is going to unify our people and not divide us and divide us and work hard to fulfill our needs. We need a leader to make sure that our medical facilities are fully staffed with doctors and nurses and specialty staff at market value. We need a leader who's going to put the Housing Authority back to work by instilling a building trades company. We have our own plumbers, framers. We're building our own homes all across the Indian country. We need a leader that's going to root out the corruption and hold the unethical government officials accountable, and engaging reforms and demand the utmost transparency from our tribe. But I've served the council for the last 8 years as tribal council in District 3, and I'm ready on day one to step in and clean up all the corruption that's happening and bring Cherokee Nation into the light. Like the scripture says, where there is no vision, people will perish. My vision is that our elders have assisted living centers. Our kids are going to college. Our elders have a world-class healthcare system. But the message is simple. It's to put Cherokees first. Turn back to a time when Cherokees are helping Cherokees instead of Cherokees helping non-Cherokees to the detriment.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Thank you, everyone, for coming. That concludes the debate.